toddlers, man, they'll knock you off your game quicker than an adult will.
Yep. Sometimes I'm like, you are right. And I don't have a comeback to that. So
yeah.
I'm just going to walk away.
That's
I'm like,
right.
here, you want some chocolate milk?
Yeah.
Like, here, have some chocolate milk, have a cookie. Like,
That's right. You don't have to edit that one out.
Hey, we're a pet company. That is all the time. All right, welcome back to the Dog Mom podcast. And today we have a very special guest, Kristen. Thank you so much, Kristen, for joining us in the Dog Mom podcast. Thank you so much for reaching out. And we talked briefly about your experience as a, therapist or a coach for end of life for your pets. And tell me a little bit about your experience and kind of how you found yourself in this position.
Good. So thank you for having me too. I'm glad to be here. So my experience, my background, I am a degree holder in veterinarian technician. I also have a certificate in end-of-lifestage pet doula. I've been in the animal field for about 15 years now, with 14 of those being in an animal hospital in South Mississippi. The last year is when I really started doing the doula business, and that has been nice. Missed, the animal hospital setting. There I had experience with being a lead technician, being an inventory manager, and then also an office assistant manager. So I kind of took all of that experience. I knew I still wanted to be an advocate for animals, but I was trying to figure the right route to go. And after losing my dog, Magnum, I kind of had a gravitational pull towards concentrating on the end stages and helping families during that time.
Yeah, and tell us the story of Magnum. I don't think you've actually told me the story. So
I haven't. It was my first year at Pet Haven, I believe. So I was newly out of school, newly in the field as a technician. So we got to work one day, and there was a box of puppies at the front door, and there were like 9 or 10, and there were a lot. And it was so much to where each technician had to take 2, and they were only 2 weeks old. So
my
it was
gosh.
like, this was a real, welcome to the crew, welcome to this job. I hadn't had any experience with, hand raising any animals. So I did. It was still bottle. His little ears were not fully opened yet. We were still having to stimulate him with a wet cloth to go to the bathroom. They were very, very young. So I ended up adopting his brother out, and I kept Magnum. I was at a vet clinic. We're allowed to bring our animals, obviously. So he went to work with me every day. We actually joked and called him our kennel manager for the clinic. And he was such a great dog. He was a really, really great dog. And whenever I became a mom, he became a stay-at-home farm manager, because we have a farm. So we transitioned his work title to a farm manager. And he lived out the rest of his days, with us at home and just helping out around the farm. So we like to say we retired him from the vet clinic.
Yeah, what a welcome to your first job, right? Your first.
Yeah. I was the newbie, right? So that's already nerve-wracking. And everyone had more experience as far as on the job training, where I had just gotten out of school and graduated. So it was really challenging to me, but I did it.
Yeah, what a welcome for you. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like the first week hazing, you're kind of
What? Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because I was actually, during that time, my mind frame was like, wow, they really got me. they're really trying to see if I'm gonna hold up or not. But it worked out, and it was great. It was a great experience. But today, I don't think that I would hand raise another animal unless I absolutely had to, because they're just different. They're
Yes.
different. They don't have their parents really to teach them little doggy manners and stuff.
Right.
So their hand raised animals are a little bit different than your
I
regular.
I mean, I would assume this is
Yeah,
why we take puppies home at 8 weeks instead of 2
that's
weeks.
right. That's right.
Well, what a fun story. And how old did Magnum live until?
So he was born in February of 2011, and he passed away in May of 2024.
Okay, so like 12 years.
Yeah,
That's
he
a
was.
good life.
Yeah, yeah. He lived a pretty good life, a long life for a big dog, for a lab.
Yeah, for a lab. Yeah, and that's amazing. And how did Magnum's story kind of help you to figure out what you wanted to do in this part of your life and
Yeah.
your career?
So, euthanasia is such a funny thing, and you have you sympathize with each story that comes in. And in the vet field, I feel like I can speak for a lot of people in the vet field when I say this. When it's your own, it's different. You're in a different mind frame. It's just a different experience. It's something that weighs on you a little more because it's your own little animal baby. So um just my whole end of life experience with him, because he was diagnosed with cancer in January of 2024, and he was given a month to live. So we were able to keep him around for another few months, until May. So I remember the day that I got the diagnosis from the oncologist, and them saying that, you leave there and you think, like, now what? Like, what do I do now? And leading up to his death, I knew that I was, this is an experience that I feel like some people just don't need to go through it alone. Obviously you bring your animal to the vet, but me leaving the specialist that day, like, that's it. That's all that I have with them, the time with that doctor. So, some people, if you're not familiar, if this is your first time going through this with your animal, you're kind of lost. Like,
Mhm.
you don't want to keep bugging, your veterinarian to be like, okay, well, now what? Now what? Now what? And you just need a little extra push. And some people need an advocate for them and for their animal. And, after Magnum passed, I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. I have years of experience behind me that I feel like would contribute to this service. So it was a no-brainer for me to go this route and
Right.
and help in this way, not just the animals. I'm still able to speak for the animals, but I'm also able to help the pet, or the pet owners, just in a little bit more detail. You have more time with them versus in your 15-20 minute time slot appointment at a vet clinic. So it was the right thing to do for me.
Right. And you kind of bring that experience of you working in
Yeah.
a vet atmosphere, and you can kind of guide people on how to talk to their vets and
Right.
what to do next in regards to your vet. That really resonates with me because when my dog Birdie was diagnosed with kidney failure, she was we were told that she only had a few months to live. And
Yeah.
so I feel in that same way, it's like, what do I do at this point? Do I go see another vet for a second opinion? What
Right.
can I do starting today that can prolong her life, maybe ease her pain down the road, or anything? And we weren't really given much other than, oh, she's got this and it's congenital and she has maybe 2 to 3 months.
Right.
So you're, like you said, you're left with, okay, I hear you, but then what do I do? What
Yeah.
I feel helpless, and this is,
Yeah.
and my dog at the time was only 2 years old. So I think she wasn't even two. It was she was 1.5. So at
Yeah.
that point, you're left feeling alone. And luckily, my husband and I have each other, and we can talk. But I think of those people who maybe don't have a life partner,
Yes.
and of course you have probably friends or family who know your dog, but they're
Yeah.
not attached to your dog every single minute of the day, and they can't really relate to you while you're going through
Yeah.
this whole thing. So I do see where you're coming from, and it's a difficult time for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about the first dog or the first family that you helped when after you started the service.
Going off of what you just said, the companionship, an older man, that was his companionship. He had lost his wife. He lived alone, and his dog was, was it for him. His best friend is, he didn't have any children. So that was tough. Those situations in the doula side and the veterinarian side, that's always tough, especially whenever it's an older person as well. And that that is a fulfillment, you know, for them having their animal, whatever void maybe, whatever journey that they're in life, that, they have their animal with them, next to them. So the first one with that was an older gentleman, and losing his dog, and then having to go through that experience by yourself too, when you don't have a support system. That is the other part that people sometimes forget, is the support after your pet is gone. And I'm very, very big on that. The grief hits you harder when your pet is already gone, and following up, and especially people like that, especially our older community, that we know that it's just them. And those situations always have a more sensitive spot in my heart, because my grandmother was old and by herself and only had her dog Scofie. So I'll always be a little bit more sensitive about those
Mhm.
situations. And just going off, like what you said, that companionship.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always wondered, as my own dog, Kramer, he just celebrated his 16th birthday. So
Yeah,
an incredible age for a
absolutely.
large dog.
We
Um,
talked about that. That is
yes.
wild.
Yeah, I mean, in his heyday, he was around 70 pounds, a
Yeah,
large golden doodle. So, full of life and loved to play and very silly. And now seeing him going through, the end of life is hard, because you see there are times in the day where he's very bright and he can actually like hop and skip, which I don't
yeah,
know if it's because his joints are hurting him, but he definitely does skip a little bit and jumps. And but then also his legs, his hips are kind of giving out. He has a hard time standing up. And he had a fall the other day, a few weeks ago, and he couldn't get up in the middle of the night. And he kind of
yeah,
rubbed a little sore spot on his shoulder because he was just like turning around on the floor.
yeah,
He like fell off the bed and went onto the hardwood floor and was like spinning, and kind of had a bruise on his like an open sore on his shoulder that we've kind of nursed him back to health, and now
yeah,
the scabs have fallen off and he's back. He's okay. But just seeing him kind of in the later parts of his life, it does really make me sad, but also happy for all the years that we've had with him.
yeah,
And it kind of gets me to thinking about, and you can't help but think about, like, when is the right time, right? Like, when is
yeah,
he gonna tell us that it's time to go?
yeah,
On my way driving to the office today, I was thinking about how it's just an incredible amount of, I wouldn't say like pressure, or maybe it's responsibility that's placed on our shoulders as pet
yeah,
parents. And I think maybe somebody who hasn't had the experience of putting down their pet might feel guilty about, like, when is the right time?
yeah,
Am I doing the best for my dog? Am I
yeah,
being selfish in either ending it kind of early or dragging on too late? So I'm sure these are kind of the questions that a lot of your customers, or like a lot of the people that
Yeah.
you talk to, ask you about. So
Yeah.
what do you say to them when they have these type of questions for you?
That is one of the toughest parts of this. And one of the most sensitive ones that you just have, you have to, when you talk about this, be confident in it too. That's one of the biggest things that, pet parents, they think, one, am I giving up too soon? That's always the first question.
Mhm.
And two, you know, who am I doing this for? Am I trying to, gratify myself by keeping them around? Is this something that, you know, is being a service to my companion? So those are always hard. Am I making the wrong decision too soon? Like you said. So trying to establish the answers to those questions and asking those hard questions. Normally, the answers are kind of all over, but the answers always circle back to us. And why we're doing it is because of us. And you don't want to say goodbye. And that's totally normal. That's totally normal. My big thing is what to look for. What should we start looking for? They're being dismissive. Um, they're sleeping way more than what they normally would have slept. Old companion animals sleep just like little old people too. That's just what they do, but they're sleeping way more. They're not interested in their favorite treats anymore. They're not interested in food or water anymore. They may go outside to go to the bathroom once or twice, if they even get up to go to the bathroom. Some of them, they just become very messy at the end of their life. Some of them become more vocal than normal. Some are a little aggressive because they don't want to be messed with. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to, have any type of interactions because they're just tired. And then others have what we call the look. And that one was hard. Going back to Magnum, the night before we decided to move forward, he had the look. And it's just like, I'm tired, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And, people who might have not had the experience might think, oh, what does that look like? Am I going to know? And,
Yeah.
I think you actually do know when it comes
Yeah.
to that. So
Yeah.
I feel like, trust your gut and, go with it. And I think at the end you will know because your pet will change dramatically.
Yes.
And at the end you might delay it for a day or two, but it is inevitable.
And that's right.
Yeah. And yeah, and I feel like I asked all those questions, but those don't have answers, or those answers depend on every single person.
That's right.
So I feel like your job is probably to guide them to ask themselves these type of questions.
Yeah.
And to kind of think about all the answers, or
That's
you just talk it out, right? Because if you're saying, oh, who am I doing this for? Is it too late? Is it too early? Like there's no answer. And it's only about, you assessing your own situation.
Yeah.
And seeing if I guess more of the answers come, and you realize that either it's not yet, or it is the right time.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like even afterwards, you don't even know necessarily if you did the right thing or not.
Yeah, because you can say one thing and then an hour or two later, especially if your animal has perked up, then you're like, no, like, we still have some time. It's just, it's hard. It's tough. That's probably one of the toughest parts of being a pet owner.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
doodle.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I totally relate to that because at the end of Birdie's life, she was definitely like, very, very thin because she wasn't eating very much, and with the kidney disease, it
Yeah.
really affects your how you're eating and what food you can eat and all that stuff. She was so very, very skinny, and we put a shirt on her, so it's not as apparent that she was just skin and bones at the end. But then at the end, sometimes she has a couple of clear moments, and we kind of just like put it off, or we said, "Oh, we'll do it this afternoon. We'll call this afternoon," and then like, okay, we'll give her one more night. And I think we did this like for maybe 2 days or so, because at the vet they wouldn't even release her unless we like basically promised that we would call right away, because they wanted us to do it at the vet, at the
Yeah.
emergency vet, and she had been in there for a few days already. Just we're just trying whatever to see if we can,
Yeah.
last ditch effort, I guess. She's been in and out of the hospital at that point. And then so we basically promised that we would do it that afternoon, but we kind of just dragged it on for one more day.
Right.
Maybe that was selfish of us, but she looked good for a little bit,
Yeah.
so I didn't even remember this until just now talking about it. I think I
Yeah.
like push it
A
out of my
memory
brain.
unlocked. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, when you're talking about grief with the pets, and it's not just about like that day or that week. It definitely like lingers on for a long time, and
Yeah.
sometimes, maybe when you don't have like a partner to talk about, and it's just you and your dog, having that one person to talk to that day is not enough, and you do need some more support in the weeks or months, leading up to it, following it, and just checking in and see how they're doing and all that stuff.
Yeah, because those are some of the toughest days, when you're used to having that door greeter, or you're used to having that snuggle in bed, or that afternoon walk, or if you have children and you're play ball, or whatever the case is. It's those days leading after. And I just take my own experience with that. You have little moments or holidays, and some people, look, and this comes from the vet side too. There's some people that love their animals like more than their grown children. Or like, I cannot tell you how many people have said, they have mourned their pet dying more so than a human in their life. And that just goes to say, for the bond, the bond is different that we have with animals than what we have with other people in our life. So yeah, it's something that's special. It's something special to be on my side and see, but then I know the feeling too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this, and like, why do we feel so strongly for our pets? And I mean, I haven't lost a parent yet, but I think maybe with I'm just speculating here, right? Maybe with like a human who is older than you, you kind of see the middle or the end of their life, and then with a dog, it's like you see it from their early life, the puppy stages, and go through the whole life cycle, and you see the whole life, and you kind of
Yeah.
that just hits people a little bit differently. Not
Yeah.
saying that it's more or less, but it just um, like we're the protector and the
Yeah.
provider for that being, right?
Yeah.
And um, hopefully, like as parents, we never have to see the end of the life for our kids. And
Yeah.
we raise them, and then we grow them up, and then we see them off as adults, hopefully, and then
Yeah.
hopefully we pass before they do, right?
Right.
And with the dog, you're just seeing the whole life cycle, and
Yeah.
it's just so short. So
Yeah.
you can be in your 20s and have seen the whole life cycle of a dog that you've had since you were a child.
Yeah.
And it can hit you at any moment of time, right? Whether you're in your 20s, or later
Right.
on in life, you're just seeing the whole life cycle. And I think that just hits just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Makes
No,
you think
that's a
about it.
great way of explaining it. And it does. It's different.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely different. And speaking of kids, how do you guide families with kids through the grief? And do you recommend that we kind of talk to our toddlers? I have twins and they're 3.5. So they're kind of like we talked about, they're kind of getting the idea of dying. They know the word died, but I don't know if they really know what that means, but they say it. So
Yeah.
how do we prepare our kids? I know you have, young kids as well.
Yeah.
So in that, 3 or 2 to like 5, 6 range, like what do you tell them? And do you tell them anything?
Yeah, so I think this is also one of those situations what works best for your home, and just your parenting style. But we did talk about this. Having appropriate talks, getting down on their level, and just using a vocabulary that is within their understanding. And when I said don't lie, but don't tell them the whole truth. And what I mean about that is you don't have to say the details. It's not something that they need to know anyway. Even if you're getting into 8, 9, 10-year olds who understand what the details would be. It's just it depends. It just depends on the maturity of the child. It depends on, how you want to say it. But do I think that you should say something? Absolutely. We talked about that with your twins, with my 4-year-old. He is learning the word dead. And I don't want to discourage it because I want him to be able to understand that, one, it's not necessarily a play word, but two, there's meaning behind it and there's deep rooted meaning behind it. And he's starting to understand that. And he sees pictures of Magnum and, he'll say, Magnum's dead. Yeah. Magnum's with Jesus. Like, yeah, like and that's what works for our home.
Mhm.
Um, and, well, why? Like, what happened? And I kind of, revert back to, and we'll talk about it later, what I said in my book about this part. You want to make it as kid friendly as possible. And so, what I usually tell people whenever they have young kids is they went on a new journey. Kids know adventure, journey, that they were going someplace else and they're going to have fun. That's where I say, like, tell them some things, but don't tell them all of it, and just
Mhm.
make it appropriate and make it on, you're sitting down on the ground at their level and, you're just reiterating, you're saying the same thing. You're keeping your story consistent.
Mhm.
Because right, kids, they like repetitiveness, and they understand stuff like that. So just whatever, as a parent, what you feel is right, but just saying something and anything that you feel would be something that they understand in their own language because they have their own language at that age.
Yeah.
And it's just when they ask again, just say the same thing.
Yeah, that's good advice because sometimes stray from that phrase, and then they start asking questions, and then
Yes.
you're hit with a question that you don't know how to answer, and then
Yeah.
sometimes in the heat of the moment, you might say something that and it's not like a huge deal or anything, but you might say a word or something, and then they pick up on that, and then they ask more things about it, and maybe you just weren't ready for that conversation at that point.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that,
Uh-huh.
because you saying that last week, something so small, I got up from the table and I said, "Oh, my back is killing me." And my little boy Bexley said, "Mom, you dead?" And I was like, "No," because I'd said my back is killing me. And I didn't realize that he, one, understood that word and could put the context with it. But I had to, I like to call myself a newer mom. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. But I was really taken back. And I was like, I have to really watch what I'm saying and how I'm using these words now, because to him, he was like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean?" And it was just something so innocent and just something so small that, going off of what you just said, like, you get hit with these random things and it throws you off your game. And then
Right.
you have to like scramble to try to come up with something appropriate. Um, but yeah, like that's funny that you said that, because that was like a new mom thing for me, that I have to like, now I have to really watch how I'm using just simple words.
Yeah, 100%. Toddlers at this age, I feel like they know so much more than you think they
Yeah.
know, and they
Yes.
pick up on a lot of things. And like one example I can give is we tell our boys when we give them chocolate to eat once in a while that don't give it to the dogs, don't give it to Pepper.
Yeah.
And they know, don't give to Pepper. And then sometimes we'll give them a reason why, so that they understand, right? Like, why do we
Yeah.
not touch the stove? Because it's hot and it can hurt,
Yeah.
right? So they have that in their mind. And then I don't even know where they even picked it up, but maybe we said it in passing, or maybe my husband said it to them at some point, but they know that like the dogs can't have chocolate because they'll die.
Yeah.
So they're like, they understand that, so they know never to give the dogs any chocolate. And then sometimes I'll say, "Oh, don't give that meat to Pepper." I don't know. Maybe I just had a lot of seasoning, or just didn't
Yeah.
want her to have it. And then they'll be like, "Pepper might die." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, no, it's not that."
Yeah.
But then how do you even in that heat of the moment explain to them that some are harmful, some foods
Yeah.
are harmful to the dogs and some are not? Like, don't worry about it. Don't,
Yeah.
worry your little 3-year-old brain that you might cause Pepper to die. I'm just like, oh no, that's not. But then at that moment, I'm like, oh, what do I even say?
Yeah. What about yeah, look, those toddlers, man, they'll knock you off your game quicker than an adult will.
Yep. Sometimes
It's
I'm
just,
like, you are right. And I don't have a comeback to that. So
yeah.
I'm
So
just going to walk
it's
away. I'm
that's
like,
right.
here,
Keep
you
it
want some
moving.
chocolate milk?
Yeah.
Like, here, have some chocolate milk, have a cookie. Like,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, you just gotta go with it, man, because
oh
it's
my gosh. Yeah. And, just to share another incident that I've had with the kids just, a few weeks ago was that a mourning dove bird had flew into our yard. It obviously was hurt in some way, I think like the leg or the wing. So we put it in the kids' playhouse in the backyard, just to see, and we gave it some water just to see if it would rest and take off the next day. But in the next morning, we looked at it and it had died.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
and then unlucky for us, the kids were out there with us and they peeked in and then they said it was sleeping. And we kind of took the opportunity to teach them that the mourning dove had died,
Yeah.
and it does look like it's sleeping, but
Yeah.
mama and dad are gonna take care of it and put it
Yeah.
somewhere else that it can continue the journey, right? Whatever we
Yeah.
said during that time, just kind of as a learning situation. We didn't want
Yeah.
to lie to them, and it was a good and the mourning dove was like, it didn't look too gruesome, so we thought it would be like
Right.
a good
It
opportunity.
was a good learning opportunity. That's
Right.
right.
Other than like, we also saw at one time a squirrel that was like flattened on the road, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, don't look at
Yeah.
that.
That's yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
That's a little too much, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
at least this was like a very calm
Yeah.
and good learning experience for them, and
Yeah.
so they talk about that. And I had printed like a little picture of a mourning dove, and then they'll sometimes point to be like, mourning dove died. And I'm like, okay, well, if it helps you to understand it,
That's right.
good. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
That's
think,
that's absolutely right.
I'm not sure if they know what died means still, but at least they can connect that instance to the word. So
Yeah. They're learning. They're
yeah,
learning.
they're definitely
Absolutely.
learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and you mentioned that you're writing a kids book. So tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about that and kind of like what's your philosophy around the stories in the book.
Yeah, so the book is about Magnum, and it's based off of his life. It's called Magnum's Final Goodbye. And it's just, it talks about his life in the beginning, being a kennel manager and being a farm, helper. And then, we skip to a part to where, he's just not feeling well. And obviously, this is where the transition is starting. It's very simplified. I'm not feeling well, and, I'll be going on a different journey soon. And then it just talks about, obviously the Rainbow Bridge and getting to go on this new journey. And the book really came to me, not so much as, the doula stuff or, veterinarian stuff. It came like, I'm a mom now, and I have small children with big emotions. So how, all these years, one of the top questions that parents ask is, what do I tell my kid? If they're not a part of this euthanasia process, if they're too young, or some of them were at college, or some just, whatever reason that they're not there, what do I tell them? And I caught myself. Now I'm on the other end of that. What do I tell them? So this is where the idea came from. And it is to be used as a tool. It's an interactive tool for parents. And there's a lot of familiar, there's farm animals in it because we have a farm. There's, that age starting 2 or 3. They know what a red barn is. So there's a lot of familiar cues in the book. And then the very end of the book is the interactive page. So I've dedicated a page to anticipatory grief, like you're anticipating your pet dying. What do I say to prepare them? And then I've dedicated a page to, your pet has already crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. So now what do I say? And it's, icebreaker questions, if you will. And you plug in your animal's name, and then you just talk about it as a family. And then it kind of is a gateway for your child, whatever the age is. I'm gearing the book more towards like 3 to 9, 10, just depends on the maturity of the child. But that opens the door for them to start asking questions too. And then you just have family time. And then, you have the book on the shelf to come back to if it's a birthday or if you're just missing your pet. It's a great story to just read with a very happy ending, without going into any kind of crazy details on why, Magnum really died, or, the whole process of the euthanasia. But I'm hoping, that it will at least help moms and any family with children to help smooth over that conversation when they don't really know what to say.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually excited to get a copy when you actually do come
Yeah,
out with the book, because I think it really helps to read books about the topic that you're talking
that's right.
about, and especially the illustrations are helpful because the kids in this age really are visual, and they look at
Mhm.
the actions of the animals, especially if like the character is an animal. In my
Right.
case, my kids, now we're reading this book about this giraffe going to the first day of kindergarten. He's not sure.
Yeah.
He's like hiding behind a tree, or he's like, sitting by himself at a table. And I asked them, like, do you sometimes feel like the little giraffe and you
Yeah.
want to hide behind a tree? And they're like, yeah. And then the book talks about how a kite gets stuck up on a tree, and the giraffe is the only one with a longer neck that can reach it. And then he
Yeah.
came out and helped the other kids get that kite. And then I kind of asked them, if you were in this situation and you're the giraffe, what would you do? And the first time reading the book, before I even flipped to the page, they were like, I'll help get kite. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, would you do that? Would you really do that? And they thought about it and they're like, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
maybe they actually wouldn't do it in that scenario, but at least they're thinking about,
They're thinking about it.
yeah, they're thinking about it. And, the more times you read it, the more they think about, oh, the little giraffe. And it
Right.
does really help them kind of take the personal out of it and see it
Yeah.
as like this animal that they love, giraffes,
Yeah.
doing something, and that really helps them. So I'm excited to actually get the book and kind of talk to them about it.
Yeah, and it's definitely so the book, I purposely, with a great illustrator, she's a local artist, I purposely left the faces blank. So the characters in the book, other than our farm animals and Magnum, is my husband, Stephen, and I with our two kids, Bexley and Bellinor. But when you look at the book, their faces are blank because I wanted those children who have wild imaginations at that point to be able to see themselves in that book and to be able to really put themselves in that story when they know they can kind of understand that something's going on with their pet. So you're right. Kids at that age, reading is such an essential thing for them because they learn so much, and they like to see themselves in that story too.
Yeah, that
So
is true.
yeah, yeah. So that was another big, a big thing that going back and with some family members, why does, y'all's faces? And once I explained it, they were like, yeah,
Hmm.
kids really do. Like, they are really big on dress up or they like to pretend or whatever the case is. So, seeing themselves, seeing, their family in those faces will, I think, also help make the connections too.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when my kids look at a face, they always point out kind of like the emotion. Like right now,
Yeah.
their favorite face is like sad, and they'll like have so much fun like making a sad face
Sad
for,
face.
I don't know
Yeah.
why they're obsessed with the sad face. And then sometimes I'll ask them like, how do you feel? And they're like, sad. I'm like, okay. But it's, if you add the face, they might be like hyper focused on that emotion without
Yeah.
thinking about, necessarily how they actually feel, right? So maybe keeping it blank is also for them to portray their own emotion and not let that
Right.
face. Because I know that happens to my kids. I don't know if other kids are like that as well, but at least for two toddlers, they're the emotions really, they get hyper fixated on that,
Yeah.
and they might not think about the other parts of the story as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That I can see.
They're
Yeah. I
little
know exactly.
weirdos.
Yeah. No, I know it. I got you.
And what kind of advice would you give to somebody who maybe has lost a pet but wants another one,
Yeah.
and they're not sure if it's right for them? Kind of like, how would you talk them through that?
So I've always said sometimes I'm the wrong person to ask this because I am for it. Absolutely. I don't think that there should be a timeline. I think that you should just do it when you feel is right. Some people will think that it's impulsive or that you're trying to replace, right? That's usually a very big thing with pet owners. I don't want them to feel like we're replacing them. Um, I I just say go for it. If pet owners are always going to be pet owners. Regardless if you have a dog and then you got a goldfish, or if you take a break and you circle back around, like it's just something that happens. And I think that, if you're missing that companionship in your life, that if regardless if you want to adopt or shop, whatever you want to do, or if you want to totally get a different species of animals, just go for it. We said for a long time after Magnum passed, like, we're not going to get a black lab. We're not going to get a black lab again. You saw him whenever we first started this. Our puppy is a black lab. So it did. I mean, I say all of this to say it took me a year to get a black lab, a year and a half. But after Magnum passed, we got Jonathan, our doodle, maybe like 3-4 months later. So, and it feels a little weird at first, once you've gone through that whole euthanasia process or just losing a pet, it feels strange because, you're like, man, I don't want this, like, Magnum to feel like I'm replacing him by getting another black lab, or I don't know if I'm going to be more reserved with my relationship in the very beginning, because, speaking on my own experience, right whenever we got our doodle, I was like, man, you have some big shoes to fill. And you have a doodle. So I think you can agree with me. Them dogs are so goofy. Like, they're so goofy.
Yes.
So, you just, you catch yourself comparing to, the last dog that you had. And especially if, that's your soul dog, some people have soul animals, and I believe in that. And it's just one of those things. Give it a little time and you won't feel as weird in the beginning. Some people don't feel weird at all. I know for me personally, I felt a little weird getting a pet right after him, but just do what you feel in your heart is best. And a lot of the times you've made the right decision, no matter what the time frame is that you decided to go with.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's a matter of us thinking, oh, what would people think? Or what would people say? Does it look weird? Yeah, people are going to say anything really to you about everything. So I think don't mind that. And in our instance, we got Pepper like a month and a half after Birdie died. And at the time, I didn't want the dog. My husband, he had a Dalmatian growing up. So when he saw like a friend of an old coworker had a litter of puppies just at home, it wasn't like they weren't a breeder. It was just like one litter. And they were pretty close by in Las Vegas. So it was kind of like a rare opportunity, right? Because we don't necessarily want to get it from another dog from a breeder. It wasn't just like a priority. So when we saw this, he really wanted to go and get one. And I was against the idea. Obviously, was not fully recovered from Birdie's death. And at the time, we also moved houses, which I think really helped me to not see Birdie like pop up in like every single corner of the house. And not everybody has a liberty to do that, of course. But it just lined up for me that it happened for us. And I think that really attributed to me like not getting so emotional every single day. Not necessarily like moving on, but just being in a better emotional state every single day. So I think that's one advice I might give to somebody is if you're just so emotional every single day, maybe just change up your routine, not take the same, walking paths or something like that. Obviously, you can't avoid your house and everything that you did in your house. But that definitely helped me. So going back to Pepper, like I really did not want this dog. And to be honest, and I tell Pepper this all the time, like when we first got you, I didn't like you at all. And she was like an alpha dog. So she was nippy. She didn't trust people. I mean, I grew up with a golden retriever, so I knew like how, sweet and loving they are. And Pepper's like, no, I don't trust you. Who are you? And it took her like 6 months to actually accept
the transition.
As her boss, basically, because she's like, no, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And I'm very familiar with like Goldens that are like, you be the boss. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
That's right. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, that's
But
right. That's how they are.
yeah, but Pepper's like a very different. She's a Dalmatian, and she's just like, no.
Yeah.
Why do I have to listen to you?
Yeah.
Who are you to be my authority? So I didn't like that at all in the beginning, and my husband took over all of the training and all that stuff in the beginning. And my boys were young too; they were like 10 months old at the time, so I was like busy with that.
Yeah.
And I just was not attached to the dog
Yeah.
at all. And now we're like BFFs.
Yeah. That's how it
Right?
goes sometimes.
So I don't know if it was a good idea to have a dog bring in one so soon, but it did work out in the end. And
Yeah.
now I love Pepper. She's my girl, mama's girl, and she's just such a loyal dog. So
Yeah.
I really think it was good for us and probably helped us to keep our minds off of things
Yeah.
and have a whole new routine.
Yeah.
Um, and so I do, am like you too, right? Where I'm like, okay, well, if it works out, don't be afraid, just go for
Yeah.
it. If you're already thinking of getting another dog, that means you're probably ready. And
Mhm.
some people are like, oh, I really don't want another dog for a long time.
Yeah.
And that I totally understand that. So if you're thinking about it and you're like open to the idea, I mean, go
Go
for
for it.
it.
Yeah. 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 I'm there. I'm there with with you. Just go for it, and then just start establishing your relationship, you know, with a new baby.
So my last question for you that I've written down here is do you ever feel like pets send signs after they're gone, and how do you feel about that, and what have you seen?
I do. I do. And I'll tell you a very, very quick story. Like I've said before in the beginning, we are in South Mississippi. So our winters are just like kind of, it's like nothing for Christmas Day to be like 80 degrees. Like it's just hit and miss with our winters. Last year, I think it was in January, February, it snowed. And it snowed for like 3 days. And it was, I think, a record breaking, like since the 60s with the snow, because it was on the ground, frozen on the ground for 2, 3. We had snow like for 4 days at our house. And we have a spot by our pond that has a like a little cement bench and a St. Francis statue. And my husband, he does the same thing with John, our doodle. He picks the dogs up and he like throws them over his shoulder and he kind of like holds them like a baby. And he used to do it to Magnum. Magnum loved it. He does it to John. John loves it. But like if I try to do it, they're like, it's just awkward.
Right.
But and we have so many pictures of him doing that with Magnum. And one day I took some time to go outside and just like soak in all of this, because like that was my first time in my lifetime ever seeing snow like that here. Like it snowed a couple of times here and there when I was younger, but nothing like this. So I went out there and I went to the bench and I looked at the statue. And you would have to see the picture to believe me, because I sound absolutely crazy whenever I say it. But there was snow that was the same print of how my husband would hold Magnum. And St. Francis is the saint of animals. So that's one of the reasons why we have the statue. That's because he was, involved with animals. But when I saw that, I was like, I know, I am not the only person that sees this. So I called my husband down to come look at it. And he, walked around, looked at it. And he was like, oh my gosh, it was the perfect print I mean, the head was like laying on his shoulders, like there was like the little arm around them. And this statue, if you look at some of the statues, some of the St. Francis statues have animals on them, and around them. This one doesn't. It's just him by himself. And the snow left an imprint just like that. And I was like blown away, blown away. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely, I'd already believed in signs, prior to that. But seeing this, I was just like, all right, Magnum, like, I see you. You're here.
Mhm.
This was a new home for us. Magnum had passed before we got here, and we have a bigger farm now. So I would always say, like, Magnum would love this place. Like, he would
Mhm.
absolutely love this place. He loved the water. We have a pond. Like, it's just one of those things. So I'm like, you are here. You're here.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
sign to show that he is here with you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like I could talk for like hours and
Yeah.
hours about this. Our old dogs and like the memories and the way they like helped us, changed us and helped us like
Yeah.
just see the life in a more beautiful way, you know?
Yeah.
And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And
Thank you.
it's just so nice and refreshing to talk to somebody like you who, really understands the feelings. And I'm sure your
Yeah.
clients are thankful for you as well, because I can see how it really helps to them to process their feelings. And for someone who is like, knows a little bit more, to help them through the process and to
Yeah.
be another source of support for them through
Yeah.
the process.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the conversation. I know you generously is giving a couple of consultations away, and I'll link that in the description below. And I'll link all of your social media profiles down below if they want to, reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much for the conversation. I had a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. And I absolutely loved hearing, the stories. And thank you. I know I know it's a little wild behind me with
No,
all the other
I
animals,
totally get it.
but I don't think it would be any other way.
Yeah, and we love and we chose this life, right? I have 3 dogs and
Yeah.
twins, and like 2 of the dogs we got after the kids. So
Yeah.
we chose this life,
Yeah.
and you have way more animals than me. You have a whole farm.
Yeah.
So you also chose this life.
Yeah.
So
You just gotta go with it.
we can't even complain. It's a great life and beautiful life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and so thank you so much.
Thank you.